I wanted to take the time and show you how I start large quantity of tomato seeds. Tomatoes are one of my favorite things to grow. I always say if I was going to be a farmer and I only could farm a couple of things, tomatoes and kale would probably be the two. I've grown probably over 100 different varieties of tomatoes in the last 12, 13 years. And when I was at the farm, tomatoes was my thing. So in the garden, I was always the one who picked out the tomato seeds, and we would plant anywhere from probably 60 plants a year. And then on the farm for a few years, I grew up to 1,500 tomato plants. And everywhere from sometimes 10 different cherries and 10 different slicers. Well, today I'm going to show you how I start them. It's the end of January, and to get a start on them, you usually have to grow them under heat mats, under lights. And usually I didn't have that much space. So what I came up with is using these 4-inch pots and planting multiple seeds in there, because once they've germinated and grown to where they have their second set of leaves, then you can transplant them. Now, I do have to say I am at home now, so I just have this small greenhouse. So I have to be careful of how many I start, because I only have so much room. Once they go into these 4-inch pots, then they'll go out, but because I'll be selling them, and I'm going to be selling them in these 4-inch pots. So I have to make sure I have enough room for them all when I put them in these 4-inch pots. So since it's the end of January, I'm going to start some cherries, because they're one of the first ones we can get into the ground here. And so what I do is take the 4-inch pot. The other thing is make sure you use a good quality seed starting mix. This is one that is really well known here in California with the farmers, and it's cocoa based, and then it has some kelp and some other things to really help the seedlings get off and going. So I take a 4-inch pot, and I don't scoop it. What you really want to do is kind of toss the soil and then pat it down. And I usually will make up a whole bunch of them first. So I lightly put the soil in, kind of smooth it out, tap it down. Fill it up, tap it down. Now, if you see it's flush with the surface of the pot, when you water, it will settle down. I am going to rinse my hands, because it's really hard to grab the seeds when your hands are wet and dirty. So I'm going to go dry them. Okay. Now you just need to decide how many of this variety do you want to plant right now. To be honest, I would not plant all your seeds at the same time. You never know what's going to happen. So usually, say if I want to end up with 10 of this variety or 25 of those variety, maybe I'll plant half now, wait for them to germinate, see how many come up, and then start some more. So I'm just going to take them, I'm going to pinch the seeds individually, and this one I'm going to evenly space them out. and it helps when your hands are dry and clean. And to be honest, I have started probably 30 seeds in a 4-inch pot before. You just have to really keep an eye on them and make sure that they have enough moisture, and when they really start coming up, that you really keep a close eye on them. And then I'm just going to take a pinch of the soil and lightly cover the seeds. Tap them down. And then I am going to water from the bottom. So usually I take a bin like this, fill it up with water, put the pots in, and then I wait for the water to soak up from the bottom until where you see the top is really moist and saturated. And I'll come back and show you that. I usually set the packet close by and then put the labels after. Today I'm starting cherries because they're one of the first ones that I can put out. I am here in Northern California, and since I find that the cherries grow a little quicker, you can put them in the ground a little bit before, probably a couple weeks before you would put out your slicers. Let's go over the basic steps. First, you start off with a good quality seed starting mix. This one here is a cocoa based. It does pre-made. It does have some kelp and some other things to help the roots and the seeds really germinate. And then you want to, don't scoop up the dirt because that really compacts the soil. What you want to do is kind of lightly toss in the soil, flatten it out a little bit, and then tap it down. And then make sure your hands are nice and clean and dry. And then you get the seeds out, and it just makes it easier for you if you pinch them and evenly kind of spread them out the best you can. To be honest, you don't have to be perfect. I have started up to 25, 30 seeds in a 4-inch pot. The biggest thing is to make sure that it has enough water, and that you step it up when it has its second true leaves. Not the first leaves that come out when it sprouts. It's the next set of leaves. Them are called the true leaves. And then I'll put it in the water so it can soak up the water from the bottom, and that makes sure that the soil is completely hydrated. A lot of times when you water overhead, it kind of just runs off to the side and it doesn't really saturate the soil. If you can just water from underneath until you step them up. Now make sure that they're not sitting in water. Make sure you water them, they soak it up, that there's no more water in the bottom of your container, and then step it up. Now this is a little more work in the sense that you're going to have to step these up at least once or twice before you plant them out into the ground. Now I do this because for me to get a head start, I'm going to put them on heat mats or under lights, and I only have so much space on that heat mat. And then The other thing is to be careful that you have enough space for them once you step them up into the greenhouse. I have to be careful with that because I only have so much space in this greenhouse. So when I was deciding on, what tomatoes and how many, and then I was like, well, how many can I start? Because I actually have a small garden here, but I'm planning to sell these seedlings, which, by the way, tomatoes are one of the great things to make a little extra money. Here where I live, people will pay, $2.50, $3 for a plant. So, that's really good money. And that's how I start large quantity of seeds in a small space.